I don't want a woman with a big belly like that. You'll have to take care of the baby all by yourself while I'm stuck with this big belly being pregnant for 9 months. He looked at me with disgust, and a mean smile appeared on his face. I knew this would happen someday, and even though I saw it coming, I went to my room right away. When I came back, I had papers in my hand. Okay, here are the divorce papers. I handed them to Anton. He looked shocked and shouted, "What's going on? Why are you doing this all of a sudden?" "Well, you suggested it first. Hurry up and sign it. I'll hand it in tomorrow," I dared him. His face went red quickly as my words hit him hard. "Just watch. You'll regret treating me badly and looking down on me," I declared. "My name's Helen. I'm 26 and a housewife. 2 years ago, I worked at a mobile company. That's where I met Anton Cade, my boss, when I was 24. We fell in love fast and got married. Anton, 3 years older, was really supportive, especially when I was new and clueless at work. I couldn't thank him enough for teaching me everything. As we worked together, we became friends and started going out for dinner often. When he asked me out, I was thrilled, especially because I'd never dated anyone before. It's a bit embarrassing, but I was always more into cartoon characters than real guys. But with everyone around me getting married, I started feeling the pressure. When I fell for Anton, I promised myself he'd be my first and only love. So when we started dating and got married a year later, I was so happy. Anton was handsome and popular with the ladies at work. I was proud to be his wife, and people congratulated us, saying they were happy for us. But little did I know what was coming. The day after we got married, I told my coworkers, "I'm married now, so I'm quitting my job." Just when we were excitedly beginning our married life, Anton dropped a bombshell, saying, "I've always wanted my wife to focus on the home. Don't worry, I can take care of us financially." "But this is so sudden. You never mentioned this before," I responded. Anton had never brought up me quitting my job before we got married. I got this job through my dad's connection, so leaving without notice wouldn't be right. I wanted to explain, but Anton's eyes silently warned me not to bring it up. So I stayed quiet. I couldn't hold it back any longer. "I know I should have told you, but it's decided. Starting tomorrow, you're not going to work," Anton declared. What a shock. Anton's announcement about me staying home starting tomorrow hit me so suddenly I felt dizzy. But Anton was firm in his decision. I couldn't argue with him, considering he used to be my boss. Even though I had to leave my job abruptly, I was determined to make our marriage succeed. Since Anton chose me and entrusted me with running the household, I wanted to live up to his expectations. I didn't want to seem like a bad wife. I put all my effort into the housework, cooking meals, especially Anton's favorites, and setting the table with as much food as possible. Even though Anton ate without saying whether he liked it or not, I secretly hoped for a word of appreciation. After quitting my job and losing my identity, I craved that acknowledgement. "Anton, I have an important meeting tomorrow. Is my jacket clean?" I asked. "Yes, it's ready," Anton replied. He sometimes showed a traditional, controlling side. Despite this, I reminded myself how lucky I was to have married him and tried to meet his expectations. With no income of my own, living with Anton was my only option for a normal life. Although our relationship often felt more like employer and maid than husband and wife, things were mostly smooth. But one day, I fell ill and couldn't get out of bed. Feeling weak, I thought, I'll catch up on chores tomorrow. Anton stormed into the bedroom and snapped, "What are you doing? Get up and make some food." He kicked the blanket off me. "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well today. Can you manage something for yourself?" I pleaded, hoping for sympathy. Instead of understanding, Anton scowled and said, "You don't even work, and you're lying down because you're a little sick. Pathetic. Get up." He kicked me again, and I got up stunned. I couldn't believe he would demand chores from his sick wife. I'd never seen this side of him before we got married. Maybe I missed it, but it was too much. I did my chores, tears streaming down my face. After days of feeling unwell, I realized I'd missed my period. Rushing to the drugstore, I bought a pregnancy test. When it turned out positive, tears of joy streamed down my face. I couldn't wait to tell Anton when he got home from work. But when he finally returned well past midnight, reeking of alcohol and stumbling, my excitement waned. It was surprising how much he'd drunk, especially without warning me when I had dinner prepared. Despite my eagerness to share the news, I hesitated seeing him in such a state. "I haven't been to the doctor yet, so it's not confirmed," I started, hoping to share our happiness. But Anton's reaction was unexpected. His face darkened as he muttered, "A child? What have you done?" It was a side of Anton I'd never seen before, his tone unlike anything I'd heard from him. "What? I don't want a kid. This is the worst. If you're having it, raise it yourself." His harsh words hit me like a slap, and he stormed off to the bathroom, tossing his clothes aside. It was unreal. I couldn't understand why he'd say such hurtful things about our baby instead of being happy. The joy I felt moments ago vanished, replaced by deep sadness. How could he say that? He'd never mentioned not wanting kids before. We hadn't even talked about birth control, so I naturally assumed we both wanted children. Hearing him call having a child the worst was beyond belief. As I hung up Anton's jacket and went to take his shirt to the laundry, something caught my eye. "What's this?" A piece of paper peeked out of the dress shirt pocket, clearly a receipt by its texture. At first, I thought it was just from tonight's outing, ready to toss it away. But then I saw the name of the establishment. "Is this from a motel?" My hand shook as I held the receipt, confirming my suspicion. It was indeed from a motel. The weight of this discovery pressed heavily on my heart. Why doesn't Anton love me? Isn't marriage supposed to be built on love, especially since we've only been married for a little over a year? How could this be happening? I'd spent years lost in fantasies, never fully experiencing a real relationship. I couldn't immediately accept this harsh reality. But the idea of Anton cheating started to make sense, and pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Had Anton been using me since the beginning of our marriage? Was he truly in love with someone else while I was just a convenient servant? All these doubts churned inside me. Was that why he reacted so harshly to my pregnancy news? As I wrestled with these thoughts, nausea overwhelmed me, and I grew convinced that something wasn't right. Yes, it's clear now. Maybe he pushed me out of the company because his mistress was there. It felt like pieces were falling into place, as if he'd married me for stability rather than love. Reality blurred with my imagination, but his heartless words after learning about my pregnancy couldn't be ignored. That day, I resolved to gather evidence of Anton's affair. From then on, his cold treatment of me was undeniable. It was as if he couldn't forgive me for getting pregnant, even though he knew I was suffering from morning sickness. He'd deliberately eat strong-smelling foods near me and criticize my housework, making me do it over again. My pregnant body endured a lot, and my heart weighed heavy. But despite it all, I continued to investigate his affair. Anton was glued to his cell phone, even taking it to the bathroom, making it impossible for me to sneak a peek. When I managed to sneak into his room, it was spotless, with nothing suspicious in sight. He was always meticulous at work, and his desk was impeccably organized. I realized it would be hard to catch him off guard directly. I kept checking his pockets for any clues, like receipts, but my investigation was proving tough. The idea of hiring a detective crossed my mind, but I didn't have the money for it. Lost in thought about my situation, I got a surprise call. It was my father, who rarely contacted me, so I was curious about why he was calling. "Hey, it's your dad. How's everything?" he asked. His call caught me off guard, knowing how busy he usually is. "Dad, what's up? Aren't you swamped with work?" I questioned. "My team's been handling things well, so I've got some free time," he explained. My dad's the CEO of a company in Canada, and work has always been his priority. I didn't have many memories of playing with him as a kid, but I respected his dedication, so his call left me curious. I asked, "What's going on?" As he began to speak, he dropped a bombshell. "Seriously?" I exclaimed, struggling to believe it. "Yeah, he wouldn't make this up. I need you to trust me on this," my dad reassured me. At first, I was speechless, but as it sunk in, I felt relieved. "Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate it," I said gratefully before ending the call. After all my dating, I was starting to see results, and it felt like a small victory. But with each new piece of information came a surge of anger and frustration over the ongoing tension with Anton. Months dragged on, and our relationship stayed strained. Then, something happened that turned our world upside down. At 9 months pregnant, I treaded carefully around Anton, always on edge. I tried to keep to myself, living a quiet, restricted life. One evening, I served dinner as usual, and when Anton got home, we sat down to eat. As I quietly took my first bite, Anton suddenly slammed his fork down. "What's this? It's awful," he yelled, hurling the food I'd made onto the floor. His sudden rage left me bewildered, struggling to make sense of it all. Anger surged within me as I watched him dismiss the meal I prepared. "I've been thinking about this for a while. Lately your cooking has been bland," Anton criticized, claiming my meals lacked flavor. It was true that during my pregnancy I'd been toning down the spices for health reasons, but it was only temporary. If he wanted more flavor, he could have added seasoning himself. Why did he have to react like this? Before I could respond, Anton delivered another blow with his hurtful words. "I don't want a wife with a big belly like yours. You'll be on your own with the baby while I deal with my own issues," he spat, his eyes full of malice and a cruel smile on his lips. I had feared this confrontation, but I'd hoped for a different outcome. Without a word, I stormed off to my room, retrieved a document, and returned to confront Anton. "Here are the divorce papers," I declared, thrusting the documents in front of him. Anton's face twisted in shock. "What on earth? Why now?" he stuttered. "Your idea. Sign them quickly. I'll file them tomorrow," I retorted. Truthfully, I'd been considering divorce since I suspected Anton's infidelity. But with a baby on the way, I hesitated, unsure if I could manage alone. Now though, I had a plan. My resolve seemed to provoke Anton's, his face boiling with anger. "You'll regret this. Every moment you belittled and controlled me," I warned, unwavering. "I'll manage. Don't worry," I reassured him. Perhaps annoyed by my determination, he snatched the papers and began filling them out. "Here. If this is what you want, take it," he grumbled. "Thank you," I replied, surprised at how smoothly Anton handed over the divorce papers. The next day, I wasted no time in submitting them and leaving the house. I knew he'd be in for a shock when he got home from work. Moving in with my parents seemed like the right move, especially with my dad returning to the US from Canada. I was grateful for their support and fed up with life with Anton. On a day I left, Anton called 3 times, but I ignored everyone. Eventually, the calls stopped. It was clear I meant little to him. He was probably content with his mistress, maybe even considering remarriage. I'd moved on from Anton, and 6 months had flown by. My baby arrived safely, and I was happily settled with my parents. Life was peaceful until Anton called again. At first, I ignored his calls, but his persistence forced me to answer. "What do you want now?" I asked, wary of his tone. "Why were you on that show? And since when were you the daughter of a CEO with millions?" Anton's voice boomed with surprise and anger. It turned out he'd seen a TV show broadcasted after I returned home. I'd been approached by a TV station because of my father's position as the CEO of a top global tech company. They featured our family's lavish lifestyle, filming at our house and discussing our wealth, estimating it at around $10 million. I hadn't expected Anton to see the show, but the power of TV is remarkable. "By the way, I didn't mention I have a $33 million inheritance, which is why I could divorce you," I calmly replied. "My father told me about it, giving me the confidence to live comfortably after our divorce." Anton's immediate reaction was pure fury. "What? That's underhanded. Why keep this from me? Half of it belongs to me, doesn't it? Give me the money," he demanded. Just as I thought, seeing the show only made you think of squeezing money out of me. Gifts from parents don't count in property distribution. And let's not forget your own wrongdoing, I retorted. "I'm tired of your anger, Anton. You made the call. You should know better. You can't blame me for your actions. You cheated, didn't you? And with someone from your company, a junior, right? You started before we even got married," I revealed, shocking Anton with the information I got from my father. Finally, I had the upper hand. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father has connections in your company. One of them spilled the beans about your affair. I never brought it up, but I will be asking for child support," I declared. Anton, still in denial, protested. "Stop joking. Why should I pay? It's your fault for getting pregnant and slacking off with the housework." Hearing Anton blame me without owning up to his own mistakes was unbelievable. How could I have ever been married to someone so lacking in common sense? I knew leaving him was the right decision. I thought as Anton's pitiful plea reached my ears. "I'm broke. My wife spent all my money, and now I'm drowning in debt," he lamented, leaving me more dumbfounded than angry. "I never want to deal with such an unreasonable person again," I declared, gripping my phone firmly. "Your words are ridiculous. I want nothing to do with you. My lawyer will handle child support." Don't call me and you won't see our child anymore. Goodbye." "Wait," Anton pleaded, but I didn't entertain him. After pouring out my emotions, I hung up and blocked his number, taking a deep breath. It's over now, right? No more calls from Anton. I don't want him disrupting our peaceful life, I reassured myself. Just then, I heard my baby crying from the other room, and I hurried to comfort them. It turned out Anton started paying child support each month, as a former colleague revealed. He claimed his new wife was a big spender, and he struggled to cover his living costs with mounting debt. Apparently, he reached out to me hoping for a share of my inheritance, but with me not budging, he found himself drowning in expenses, his income falling short. Whether it was pride or financial pressure, Anton's life took a downward spiral. To add to his troubles, he foolishly began his job hunt after leaving his current company, leading to financial hardship. Learning this from a colleague left me unmoved. He brought this upon himself. His cruel words and actions won't be forgotten easily. I hope he learns from his mistakes. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying parenting with my parents, free from financial worries. With the possibility of inheriting the company, I'm ready to step up. Like my hardworking father, I'm determined to make my mark. Constructing your own home stands as a monumental achievement in life's journey. But for me, Adeline, aged 30, this milestone was a harbinger of sorrow, marking the crumbling of my marriage. My family unit comprised my 35-year-old spouse, Yuri, and our cherished 3-year-old Sarah. The vision was clear, to erect the dwelling of our dreams. Eagerly, I shared our aspiration with my loved ones, yearning for their support, anticipating smooth progress. Yet reality proved harsh. While others may sail through such endeavors seamlessly, my path diverged. Recent times had been fraught with obstacles in materializing our dream abode, compounded by interference from Yuri's parents. The unraveling commenced on a fateful day when I entrusted Sarah to their care. Yuri and I, slaves to our professions, scarcely savored moments together in the week. Our weekends were devoured by property tours and consultations with architects. Bringing Sarah along proved futile. Her restlessness eclipsed the joy of exploration. Thus, we relied on my parents, conveniently close by, to tend to her. Then came the morning when their news shattered my routine. My father's ailment mandated a hospital visit, rendering them unable to care for Sarah. There seemed no alternative. Our plans for the day hung precariously on the edge of cancellation. Yet, in a surprising turn, my husband proposed, why not ask my parents to look after her? His suggestion stirred an unexpected turmoil within me, the prospect of discord looming. Truth be told, my relationship with my in-laws was strained. They possessed a notion that familial ties equated to unchecked liberties. Since when was such behavior permissible? Moreover, burdening them with the sudden responsibility of caring for a toddler felt intrusive. However, postponing our plans risked stalling progress on our dream home. After much internal debate, I relented, leaving my daughter in their care. Once my errands were done, I sought to ease any potential tensions, purchasing lavish treats and tokens of appreciation before returning to their doorstep. Perhaps swayed by my gestures, my in-laws welcomed us warmly, expressing gratitude for the gifts as we bid our farewells. Yet on the journey home, I overheard my daughter's innocent chatter. "I'm going to get a new house," she declared, her voice brimming with excitement, before inquiring, "Where will Grandma and Grandpa's rooms be in the new house?" "Oh, Sarah, what are you saying? Did Grandma and Grandpa ask you about their rooms? What did you tell them?" I probed gently, noticing her reluctance to speak further, her gaze fixated on the stuffed penguin cradled in her arms. "Oh no," she murmured, a hint of uncertainty clouding her features. Sighing softly, I attempted to clarify the misunderstanding. "Sweetheart, Grandma and Grandpa aren't moving in with us. Perhaps they were just curious if we have a guest room for them when they visit," I reassured her, hoping to dispel any confusion. From that day onward, my in-laws' visits became more frequent, encroaching even on weeknights and holidays. Currently residing in a modest apartment to save for our future home, their presence always seemed to revolve around our plans and aspirations. Whenever they arrived, my husband eagerly presented them with the blueprints and documents detailing our dream house, his enthusiasm unwavering despite my reservations. "Why do you always have to show them?" His question, tinged with disappointment, left me feeling guilty. But it was my mother-in-law who truly put me on edge. Her inquiries felt akin to an interrogation, each query delivered with the weight of judgment. This design for the kitchen seems impractical. You should reconsider. And we need more tatami rooms. They're essential for comfort as we age. Also, one child's room won't suffice if you plan to expand your family. Have you thought about the declining birth rate? Her words pierced through me like accusations in a courtroom. Wow, definitely not the declining birth rate part, I interjected, unable to suppress my frustration. She couldn't care less about that. She was waiting for my response, Adeline. Well, given our prior discussions and the arrangements made with our contractor, the layout is already finalized based on our family's needs, I retorted, my tone laced with annoyance. But what about the furniture? Appliances? She pressed further, her role as a self-proclaimed interior designer evident in her relentless scrutiny. Drawing on my experiences and observations, I defended our choices. I've seen plenty of homes and rooms through my extensive network and discerning eye. This house, this room, doesn't meet your standards, but it's what works for us. Things aren't perfect, but we're doing our best, I countered, frustration simmering beneath the surface. Attempting to diffuse the tension with a hint of sarcasm, I suggested, maybe we should split the costs and make it a two-family house, since you seem to have so much input. Her reaction was explosive. Give money to our son and daughter-in-law. You're a gold digger. A two-family house. Ridiculous. With emotions running high, my in-laws left abruptly, their departure marked by bitter words exchanged in the heat of the moment. Go home. You're not my parents, you're my in-laws. I don't owe you anything. Stop acting like my bosses. I finally snapped, the weight of their intrusion too much to bear. Later that evening, after tucking our daughter into bed, my husband approached me with a weary tone. My parents are just trying to help. Try not to shut them out, he urged, a hint of exasperation in his voice. I'm not trying to shut them out, but they meddle in every aspect of our home. They always push us into corners. They treat us like puppets and mock our decisions, I rebutted, frustration seeping into my words. It's natural. They're parents. Just think about how you'd feel if it were our daughter, he reasoned, his tone softening. You know I'm not always the most compassionate person, but they need to understand boundaries, I retorted, feeling the weight of his dismissal. With his back turned to me, he fell silent, unwilling to engage further. While they may be your parents, they're not part of our household. They don't contribute financially, so they don't get to dictate, I asserted, my anger mounting at his unreasonable stance, making sleep elusive that night. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, our home was complete. Excitement filled the air as we settled into our new abode. Yet my husband's revelation shattered the tranquility. My parents are moving in today. They'll take the larger room on the second floor, and we'll take the smaller one, he declared casually. What? Hold on. We agreed one of those rooms would be Sarah's. I never agreed to living together. None of this was discussed, I protested, incredulity coloring my voice. They've already seen the room. Don't worry, they'll like it, he assured me, his nonchalant tone aggravating my frustration. Your parents have seen it too. When? I queried, my bewilderment palpable. The day before we went to see the house, he admitted casually. Wait a minute, so let me get this straight. Your parents visited the house before we did? I pressed, struggling to comprehend. Yeah, they wanted to take a look, so I gave them my key. What harm could it do? It's not like they damaged anything, he replied, his tone dismissive as he returned to wiring the TV. What harm? It's a big deal, I snapped, avoiding eye contact as I abandoned the kitchen and retreated upstairs. Locking the door behind me, I sought solace in solitude, my mind a tumult of frustration and confusion. Grateful for the distraction of tidying up after the move, I stewed in resentment toward my husband and in-laws, especially given their sudden decision to move in with us. I can't stand being around them for another minute, but we've just made a huge investment in this house. I need to keep calm, think about what I say, and consider my daughters and my future, I resolved, sequestering myself in contemplation as I awaited their arrival. True to my husband's word, they appeared early in the afternoon, unloading their belongings from a truck. They could at least greet us. They have no sense of decency. And look at this mess. You haven't even cleaned up yet. You're utterly useless, my mother-in-law criticized, her words stinging with disdain. After much grumbling, my in-laws barged into our freshly constructed home, acting as if they were entitled to do so. Eavesdropping on the commotion from upstairs, I emerged from my room and made my way to the front door. I wasn't aware that we'd be sharing our home with you as well, I stated resignedly, my tone unexpectedly icy. My father-in-law, clearly irked by my tone, wasted no time in shifting the blame onto me. I mentioned to Yuri that it shouldn't be an issue, didn't I? But it is an issue. I only found out this morning from Yuri that he invited you both to live with us, and I have no desire to reside with such disrespectful individuals, I asserted firmly. Whatever Yuri decides is fine. Are you implying you can defy your husband? He retorted. Yes, I am. Are you suggesting I'm an impertinent wife? If you don't like it, why don't you just leave? I knew this was futile. The clash in perspectives has been apparent for some time now, rendering communication impossible with these individuals. I mused silently, contemplating my next move. Before I could form a response, my husband burst in, his expression fraught with panic. Adeline, what are you doing? Don't argue with my parents. Argue? There's no parity here. I've been subjected to unilateral mistreatment simply because I'm your wife, and now you're blaming me again. Like father, like son, it seems, Yuri, I retorted sharply. I can't live with your parents, I stated firmly. Don't embarrass me. You're my wife. You're supposed to obey me, he insisted. I'm a person before I'm your wife. You can't expect blind obedience, I countered, my resolve unwavering. Listening in, my father-in-law interjected angrily. I won't accept that kind of wife for you. I won't allow her in my house, he declared vehemently. To my astonishment, my husband echoed his sentiments. Being my wife takes precedence. If you can't tend to my parents, perhaps we should consider divorce. I agree with my father, my husband affirmed. Understood. Then let's proceed with a divorce, I declared resolutely, the weight of my decision hanging heavy in the air. Even as I spoke, I silently prayed that my smartphone, nestled in my pocket, was recording every word exchanged. As the reality of our impending separation sank in, my in-laws reacted with incredulity. If we're to become strangers, then return the $259,778.88 loan I provided for the house construction immediately, they demanded, their shock palpable. My husband paled at their words, his expression one of sheer horror. Calmly, I addressed the confusion. There appears to be a misunderstanding. Yuri didn't contribute a cent to the house. It was solely funded by my savings because he had none. Despite our agreement to split expenses evenly and save the surplus, he squandered money without saving a dime, I explained, laying bare the truth for my bewildered in-laws to comprehend. Oh, come on, Adeline, you can't do this, my husband exclaimed, disbelief etched on his face. It's the truth. When it came to buying the house, he wouldn't budge. He insisted it be in my name. That's why I loaned you the money, remember? I have a signed AU, so you can't deny it, I asserted firmly. Oh no, their expressions frozen in shock. I swiftly packed my suitcase and overnight bag, filling them with essentials, clothes, and my daughter's treasured toys, ensuring her favorite penguin was securely tucked under my arm. Loading everything into my Mini Cooper, I wasted no time starting the engine. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to the house I had only just begun to call home. Hastily collecting my daughter from daycare, I sped toward my parents' house. Their surprise at my sudden appearance, clad in sweatpants and laden with luggage, was evident. If this is inconvenient or too sudden, I can stay at a hotel, I offered tentatively, but they quickly intervened, urging me to stay. I sensed their determination to shield me from harm. Sharing my plight with them, I explained my decision to leave my husband, who had nothing but scorn for me, and expressed my desire to provide a stable environment for my daughter. They pledged their full support and generously offered me a place to stay. Despite my employment, it was a lifeline I gratefully accepted, knowing I had allies in my corner. That evening, I meticulously documented every detail of my tumultuous interactions with my husband and in-laws. Saving audio recordings from my phone onto my computer and external drives, I diligently compiled evidence. Utilizing my paid time and weekends, I visited numerous lawyers, determined to find one I could trust. Eventually, I found a legal representative whom I felt confident in and submitted a formal request. My days were consumed by these tasks, and before I knew it, a week had flown by. Since the day I fled our once beautiful home, I'd been avoiding my husband, but one evening, as I left the office, he was waiting for me, though I wished to label him as my ex-husband. Until the divorce proceedings concluded, he remained my spouse in legal terms. With little to say to him, I suggested we find a public space for a conversation to avoid any potential outbursts. Ever cautious, I discreetly activated the recording function on my phone before we entered a nearby coffee shop. "Is there something you want to discuss?" I asked him calmly, steeling myself for whatever response he might offer. "Well, it's about the house. I want you to have it, Adeline. I'll remove my name from the lease. Can't we just forget about the money?" he proposed, his tone tentative. "I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't bear to live in that house anymore. Your parents, they were the first to set foot in it, weren't they?" I stated firmly. "Why does that matter?" he countered. "It matters to me, so I can't," I reiterated. Taking a sip of coffee, I scrutinized my soon-to-be ex-husband. His disheveled appearance spoke volumes: unkempt hair, stubble on his chin, and a worn-out complexion. Despite his suit, his shirt looked neglected, lacking the care of ironing or dry cleaning. I couldn't help but wonder how he was coping, but fatigue etched across his face told its own story. "Adeline, please, I can't repay such a substantial sum so easily," he pleaded. "You were aware of the amount. I even suggested we share ownership of the house, despite it being mine. But you refused to compromise," I reminded him. "I thought it would be more like being landlords. And I didn't realize you were serious about the divorce. I thought it was just a threat," he confessed, desperation evident in his voice. "I am serious. I won't tolerate such disrespectful parents sticking around," I declared resolutely. "Oh no," he murmured, realization dawning upon him. "I need to go. Sarah is waiting for me," I asserted, my unease palpable. "I'll leave when you're finished. I'm going to take care of Sarah," my ex-husband countered, his words sending a shiver down my spine. Hastily, I retreated to my parents' house, urging them to be vigilant against any attempts to forcibly take Sarah. A few days later, a call from the daycare center sent me into a panic. A couple resembling my in-laws had appeared, attempting to collect Sarah. Racing to the daycare, I arrived just in time, thankfully having alerted the staff beforehand. They had kept my in-laws confined to a separate room, denying them access to Sarah. Yet upon my arrival, I was met with a barrage of accusations. "Give me back my grandchild, you thieving cat," my mother-in-law bellowed. "I'm not a thief," I retorted indignantly. "If you're not a thief, you're a fraud. If you're not a thief, you're a swindler. Otherwise, how could you have amassed so much money at your age?" she accused, her words laced with venom. "No, all the money I lent to Yuri was my own. It's rightfully mine, a combination of my personal earnings, contributions from my parents, and a gift from my late grandmother," I clarified. "A gift?" my mother-in-law echoed incredulously. "Why didn't you think to gift our son before your grandmother passed away? You could still do it now, couldn't you?" she pressed. Caught off guard, my father-in-law let out a grunt before falling silent. My in-laws were ostentatious, valuing luxury above all else. Coming from a modest background, they lacked substantial savings or the inclination to gift large sums during their lifetime. "I'm sorry, but Yuri and I are divorcing. I'll be taking custody of Sarah and raising her alone. Please refrain from visiting the daycare. It's disruptive," I informed them firmly. With that, I hurriedly ushered Sarah into the car and returned to my parents' home. Despite my warnings, Yuri and his parents persisted in their visits. Each encounter was fraught with tension, with verbal abuse and attempts to physically restrain me becoming commonplace. I recorded every instance on my phone. About a month after my abrupt departure from our new home, I instructed my lawyer to request repayment of the debt and initiate divorce proceedings. While my ex-husband initially hesitated, particularly regarding custody arrangements for Sarah, a stern reminder of potential alimony charges for contesting the matter seemed to quell his resistance. Armed with ample evidence and facing a lack of savings on their part, I pursued the repayment of owed funds and secured custody of Sarah through the divorce proceedings. It was a lengthy process, exacerbated by complications in selling the house. Initially intended for Yuri and my in-laws, financial constraints forced them to list the property for sale at a loss. After numerous price reductions, a buyer was eventually found, but the sale proceeds were insufficient to cover the initial purchase price and associated costs. Resorting to bank loans to bridge the gap, my ex-husband found himself burdened with debt and without a home, forced to return to his parents' cramped residence. Adding to their woes, Yuri's sister, also divorced, moved back in with her 2 teenage sons, exacerbating tensions in the already crowded household. The resulting chaos and constant bickering became a notorious feature of the neighborhood. With their financial struggles hindering their ability to provide adequate child support, the courts intervened to limit their visitation rights. Thus, the tumultuous family no longer posed a threat to her peace of mind. 4 years have elapsed since those tumultuous times, and Sarah, now in the 2nd grade, brings joy to our lives every day. We reside in a rented space close to my parents' home, where their support provides solace, especially on days when work keeps me late. The thought of continuing to raise Sarah with their assistance, sans remarriage, had crossed my mind. Yet unexpectedly, romance found me. I've been seeing a 36-year-old divorced man with a 1st-grade daughter, whom I often encounter during daycare drop-offs and pickups. Our casual conversations gradually blossomed into something deeper, culminating in his heartfelt confession of affection. Recently, we've been enjoying outings together, our daughters forming a natural bond during playdates. During one such outing, Sarah innocently voiced her dream of a future home where each of us would have our own space, along with a beloved family pet. Her words stirred something within me, igniting a flurry of emotions. With a proposal lingering in the air, I stand at a crossroads. Carefully considering my daughter's welfare and my own desires, I realize my heart has already made its decision. I gather Sarah in my arms, her innocence a beacon of hope, and declare, yes, I do want to build another home. But this time, let's do it together as a family, ensuring everyone's happiness. Get out. Your old lady smell is ruining my new house, Michaela shouted as she threw disinfectant on me during her housewarming party. Drenched and overwhelmed by the pungent smell, I felt something snap inside me. Standing up silently, I flashed a terrifying smile at Michaela and said, then I'll clean this up for you. After all, I built it. I went upstairs to Michaela's room to retrieve something. My name is Harmony, a 72-year-old retired confectioner. More precisely, I was a patissier who ran a cake shop until a leg injury forced me into retirement. Now, I help my son and his wife who have taken over the business and live a modest life. Harmony, you must be happy your son took over, people would say at the tea parties I occasionally attended. I brought cakes made by my son and his wife, earning praise from neighbors. Today, at the tea party, I was engrossed in conversations when a neighbor mentioned my son. I stared at my tea, lost in thought. A shop with many memories, isn't it? Someone remarked, prompting me to reminisce. Indeed, my life had been full of ups and downs. I opened my patisserie at 35 after a decade of training in France. Upon returning, my parents opposed the idea, saying a cake shop in the countryside wouldn't work. I defied them, saying, I'll do it my way, and opened my shop. It became popular in 6 months, becoming the talk of the town. My French-trained skills were praised, attracting customers quickly. My once opposed parents came to respect and fully support me. Time to think of the next new creation, my husband Daniel said, supporting our cake shop while preparing for the next day. Summer is tough for sales. Maybe a cold dessert would be a hit. That's what we were discussing when we heard the bell at the shop door. I hurried to the counter. Welcome, I called out, only to see Michaela, my sister-in-law, who appeared 2 years older than me. She was always flamboyant, having moved from the city. She dressed to stand out, enjoying the attention. Today she wore an actress hat and sunglasses, not fitting for the countryside. Honestly, I disliked her. Her hurtful remarks and belittling of our cake shop were intolerable. Being a doctor at a university hospital, she flaunted her income and education, but only when my brother Kendrick wasn't around. I was deeply annoyed by her cowardice. Boring as ever. The decor's outdated and it's dusty. Do you even clean? Michaela said, worried her fancy clothes would get dirty. I couldn't hide my annoyance and responded curtly, did you come just to say that? I just stopped by on my way to my new house. Why else would I visit such a place? She replied, looking around carelessly and picking up a cookie, placing it roughly at the register. I can't see the shop lasting, but I'll contribute to the sale since you're Kendrick's sister. She bought a mere $7 cookie with that attitude. Who could warmly welcome such a sister-in-law? If she were Kendrick's wife, I'd have her out of here immediately. As I wrapped the product, grappling with these complaints in my heart, Michaela continued her tirade. Poor Kendrick, having such a failure for a sister. He said he gave up on his own shop because of you. Her words struck my heart painfully. Kendrick had generously helped finance my shop's construction when I returned and found no support. Only Kendrick stood by me. Later, I discovered the money he used was his own saved-up capital for starting a business. If you hadn't interfered, Kendrick might have had his own shop by now. Really pishable. Then why don't you help him financially? Daniel appeared behind me and retorted sharply at Michaela, glaring at her. It's between Harmony and Kendrick, not for outsiders like us. Only Kendrick has the right to complain about Harmony. Do you even have the right to blame her? Daniel, undaunted by Michaela, confronted her. Michaela, seemingly annoyed by Daniel's audacity, furrowed her brows and removed her sunglasses with a puzzled look. Of course I have the right. That money was mine. You have no business interfering in this. The funds for Harmony's shop were from before Kendrick married you, right? If Kendrick has no complaints, why should you persistently blame Harmony? Harmony is my wife. Which husband would remain silent while his wife is being maligned? Daniel shielded me from showing my tears to Michaela. I felt reassured by his presence and grateful to be his wife. Michaela, not amused by Daniel's words, roughly grabbed the wrapped cookies from the counter and left without another word. After she left, we put up the closed sign, and Daniel embraced me. You endured well, Harmony, he said softly. I can't do this anymore. I don't have the confidence to get along with someone like her. Even if she's Kendrick's wife, I can't bear being treated this way. Are you not going to tell Kendrick? Daniel asked gently. I can't. He's already looking after Mom and Dad. I can't trouble him just because I can't get along with her. Kendrick, working as a chef in a hotel, was also taking care of our parents. Despite the long commute he managed, he had saved to open his own shop and be closer to our parents. It was with this in mind that he was saving money. Money can be earned again. I want to see you succeed as a top patissier. This money is an investment in your future. You'll definitely become famous, Kendrick assured me, investing $2 million in my startup. I was deeply grateful to Kendrick, and when he married Michaela, I was overjoyed. But I never expected her to be like this. I was tormented daily about what to do. Tomorrow we're going to Kendrick's housewarming, right? Maybe you could mention it to him. If Kendrick talks to Michaela, maybe she'll stop, Daniel suggested. Reluctantly agreeing, I focused on closing up the shop. Lately, I couldn't bring myself to tell Kendrick about Michaela. Kendrick's happiness, while he supported Mom and Dad, was precious. Despite sacrificing his own dream of opening a shop, I couldn't burden him further with Michaela's issue. I simply couldn't. The next day, Daniel and I, with a shortcake in hand, visited Kendrick's new home. Harmony and Daniel, long time no see. Glad you could make it, Kendrick welcomed us warmly at the doorstep. Michaela was out shopping and wasn't there. I felt relieved not seeing her. Noticing this, Kendrick looked at me worriedly. What's wrong? You look pale. Is it the new house smell? No way, just had a bit too much to drink with Danny last night. I forced a smile to reassure Kendrick and avoid any awkward conversation. I asked to see around the new house. Kendrick shared that apart from the tidy living room, their personal items were still in boxes. We agreed not to go upstairs as per his request. Soon, our parents arrived, and we enjoyed a rare family gathering. Then Daniel seized the opportunity to bring up yesterday's topic. Sorry to bring this up at a housewarming, but there's something about Michaela we need to discuss. Wait, Danny. I wasn't ready, I panicked, but Daniel looked at me earnestly, holding my hand. Harmony, I've seen how hard you've worked, thinking about the family, keeping your struggles to yourself. It seems unfair to Kendrick and the others. Struggles? Harmony, have you been having a hard time? Kendrick asked, his expression full of concern. Realizing I was hiding something, everyone looked worried. I regretted my foolish thought of just enduring it all. Actually, I've been harassed by Michaela for a long time, I confessed. Everyone was shocked, especially Kendrick. Knowing his wife was bullying his sister-in-law was understandably distressing. Unable to continue, Daniel explained the situation for me. A heavy silence followed, and I wondered if I should have kept quiet. That's when Kendrick, as if having made a decision, spoke to Mom. Mom, I've made up my mind. That's right, no need to hold back anymore. Daniel and I exchanged confused looks at the unexpected response. Just as we were about to ask more, we heard the front door open. I'm back. It's so hot outside. Is Kendrick not here? Michaela returned home at the worst possible time. The family's spirits dampened as if sensing the charged air of her untimely arrival. Kendrick excused himself and headed towards the entrance. Let's store the cake in the fridge for now, Daniel suggested. As Mom and I moved to do so, reaching for the fridge door, Michaela stormed into the living room. "Hey, don't you touch our stuff," she shouted, startling Mom and me. "I'll take care of the house. Just stay put." Fading a creepy, pleasant smile, she snatched the cake from me. Her words seemed softened, but there was an underlying sharpness, especially as she roughly took the cake. Mom, witnessing this, was speechless and unable to react, shocked by such treatment in front of her. Feeling hurt, I urged Mom to join me on the living room sofa. Sitting next to Daniel, I tried to hold back my tears. "Thank you all for coming to our housewarming today," Michaela said, her tone falsely sweet. "If you have gifts, you can leave them here." "I'll gladly accept them," Michaela said, taking over as if she were the host. Her greedy words irritated both Daniel and me. Our parents, watching her closely, reluctantly presented their gift to Michaela. Following suit, though not keen, I handed over my gift, which Michaela snatched. "What a boring gift." "Typical," Michaela muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. Shocked by her audacity to complain despite receiving a gift, I felt my patience turning into anger. Then Michaela took out a bottle of disinfectant from a supermarket bag. "Well then, let's wrap this up," she said, splashing the disinfectant on me. Drenched and stunned, I was speechless as my family cried out in alarm. "So, I guess it's the height of the party," Michaela said, turning toward me and splashing the disinfectant again. Completely soaked, I couldn't believe the sudden turn of events. My family gasped. "Hey, Michaela, what are you doing?" Mom shouted, raising her voice and standing in front of me to protect me. Everyone glared at Michaela. Michaela sneered and threw her final words at me. "The smell of an old lady will dirty my new house. Get out." At that moment, something inside me snapped. Silently, I stood up with a frighteningly pleasant smile and said, "So you hate filth that much? Well, let me clean it up for you. After all, I built this place." Seeing me smile, Michaela seemed terrified and stepped back. I snatched all the presents from her, ignoring her complaints, and headed to the second floor. Conveniently, there was a nameplate with Michaela's name on it in front of the door, and I boldly walked inside. I picked up a cardboard box still packed and dropped it from the second floor to the first with a bang. "Hey, what are you doing?" Michaela tried to stop me as the boxes tumbled down one after another. With so many boxes rolling down, she couldn't come up and could only desperately scream in vain. As I dropped the last box, she yelled, "Do you realize what you're doing?" Michaela, showing her true colors in front of Kendrick, glared at me with a devilish face. Unconcerned, I went downstairs and asked Daniel with a smile, "Can you hold back that noisy trash for me? We can't let the dirty germs out. The new house will get dirty with the smell of mold, right?" Daniel must have been scared too. The words from my ever-smiling face were no longer treating Michaela as a human. I threw all her belongings outside with apparent delight. People might think I've lost my mind, and it can't be helped that they think so. "Stop it, Kendrick. What are you just staring at? Stop her. Isn't your sister out of her mind?" Michaela screamed desperately. However, Kendrick did not respond. Instead, he silently watched my next move. The entrance was overflowing with Michaela's cardboard boxes, a mess, but it couldn't be helped after throwing everything outside. I clapped my hands and walked towards Michaela for the final touch. "Well, now it's just Michaela left." "What do you mean? You think you can get away with this?" She spat, her voice laced with venom. "Who knows? I can't hear the threats of trash," I replied, my smile mechanical and eerie. Michaela gasped, looking at me fearfully. Without paying her any more attention, I instructed Daniel to kick her out along with her slippers. "Hey, stop. No, Kendrick, help me." Michaela begged Kendrick for help, but he had no intention of listening to her. At this point, I understood what Kendrick and the others meant. There wasn't a single person on her side here. "Get out if you understand. This is my house after all." "What? What are you talking about?" Before Michaela could finish, Daniel dragged her out, pushing her outside the entrance. He immediately closed the door, double-locked it, and even chained it. Michaela, now completely unable to enter, was left outside in the summer heat. She banged on the door and screamed for about 10 minutes, but her strength gradually waned. To make matters worse, neighbors came by and started whispering about her shabby appearance. "Mommy, look, that lady is outside in her slippers," a child said, pointing. "Hey, don't do that. Don't point," a parent chided, though even passing children mocked Michaela. For someone so full of pride, this public humiliation was hell. She crammed all her belongings into her car and fled the scene that day. Seeing this, I regained my composure and hastily turned to Kendrick. "What should we do, Kendrick?" "I'm sorry, that was?" "It's okay, I know the situation. Besides, we should be the ones apologizing," Kendrick said gently. He suggested we go back to the living room where Mom had prepared tea and cake. I borrowed clothes from Kendrick and quickly changed to avoid catching a cold. After changing, we all sat down, trying to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. I sat on the living room sofa as Kendrick began explaining why he had been silent all this time. "That woman was actually harassing Mom in the same way," he said. "What?" I was shocked by this sudden revelation. Daniel and I looked at Mom in surprise. "It all happened when I wasn't around," Mom continued. "She constantly harassed and mocked me, even made fun of you. It was really terrible. Michaela had been bad-mouthing you every time we met, suggesting that your poor upbringing was due to my bad parenting. She claimed that if we had more money, Kendrick wouldn't have had to struggle. That's what I confessed to Kendrick yesterday." Kendrick nodded. "Mom told me everything, and I decided that since you built the house, we should explain the situation to you and your family before deciding what to do next. That's what led to today." Michaela, who even tormented Mom, could never be forgiven. Trembling with anger, I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Seeing this, Daniel gently placed his hand over mine. "Harmony, I know how much you care about family. Maybe you don't have to endure this anymore," Daniel said softly. "After hearing all this, I definitely can't go on with her either," I said, my resolve solidifying. Inspired by Kendrick's determination, I steeled myself to teach Michaela a lesson. We pledged to act, and the next day, my phone was flooded with a storm of calls from Michaela, Kendrick, Daniel, and I decided to meet her alone. "What do you mean by kicking me out of the house? You won't get away with what you did." Michaela's shrill voice echoed as she entered my office. Wearing the same clothes as yesterday, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, she looked miserable. Her loud voice was irritating, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled sweetly, further infuriating her with my words. "I cleaned up because you said the new house gets dirty, right?" "What?" "I don't want someone as ugly as you in the house. The new house will get dirty with germs, right?" I said, putting my index finger to my lips, feigning cuteness. As unsuitable as it felt for me, it seemed to affect Michaela. Her face turned red as a boiled lobster, showing her anger. "Who's ugly? I'm far more beautiful than a third-rate woman like you," she spat. To say that with the same clothes as yesterday and such a dirty face. "Impressive," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Whose fault do you think it is that I ended up like this?" Michaela retorted, doubling down on her previous provocations. "A woman like you, acting all high and mighty," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew there was no turning back now. I taunted Michaela, which angered her enough to lunge at me. Daniel quickly stood protectively in front of me, and Kendrick, usually mild-mannered, showed his anger for the first time. "Enough. You're in no position to talk down to Harmony and her family," he said firmly. "Why should I be the one getting scolded? The bad one is clearly that woman." Michaela remained defiant, even against Kendrick's words. She must have looked down on Kendrick as well. Deep down, she was after money, blaming me for losing it and despising me despite having her own earnings. Her greed was despicable. As I glared at her with utter contempt, Kendrick slammed a piece of paper in front of her. "I have no intention of going on with someone who can't even value my family. We're getting a divorce." The paper Kendrick presented was a divorce petition already signed by him and our father as a guarantor. Seeing this, Michaela suddenly regained her composure and clung to Kendrick in a panic. "Wait, a divorce? Just wait. I don't want to hear what you have to say. My mind is made up, and if you refuse the divorce, I'll go to court if I have to. Where do you think the money for that will come from? You don't have the financial power, so don't talk big. I'll support you financially, so don't worry." Michaela tried to act humble, but Kendrick's words revealed her true nature again. Now that we had proof of her looking down on Kendrick financially, we could crush her without remorse. Smiling, I intervened between them. "Didn't you know? Besides this store, I have several others." Michaela looked at me, confusion and desperation in her eyes. She was trying to comprehend what she had just heard, but I didn't give her a chance to respond. "You thought you could manipulate Kendrick for his money? You thought wrong. Her face turned pale as the realization of her situation set in. The tables had turned, and she knew it. Kendrick, Daniel, and I stood united, and there was no way she could worm her way out of this. Kendrick gently but firmly pushed Michaela away from him. "It's over, Michaela. Leave and don't come back." Defeated, Michaela had no choice but to leave. As she walked out, her once arrogant demeanor was replaced with a sense of utter defeat. We watched her go, feeling the sense of relief and closure. Turning back to Kendrick and Daniel, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "Thank you," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. Kendrick smiled warmly. "We're family. We protect each other." "I have enough financial power to fight you," I said, causing Michaela to gasp in surprise. A TV show had previously featured one of my regular customers praising my shop. The reporter raved about its beauty and deliciousness, leading to its popularity. Requests for more stores came flooding in, and now I have a nationwide chain. Kendrick was the only one who supported the opening of my shop. As a thank you, I gifted him that house. "I had also heard about your plans to open a clinic nearby and thought you'd need money." Michaela's face turned pale upon hearing the whole situation. She must have realized she'd picked a fight with the wrong person. She was speechless. "Since I still hold the property rights, I am the owner of that house. I can sue you for trespassing. What will you do? Will you fight?" With a smile, I cornered Michaela, who seemingly gave in and began to profusely apologize. Even though Michaela continued to apologize, our family had no intention of forgiving her, and we kicked her out of the store. Kendrick and Michaela eventually went to court for a divorce. Given everything that had happened, our lawyer assured us that the divorce would be granted. Our family savored this victory. During the time she was kicked out, Michaela's face became well known in the neighborhood, and no one was sympathetic towards her. Her clinic had no patients and closed within 3 months. She shamefully fled the town. Thus, our family found peace. I continued managing my shops, and Kendrick finally opened his own. Kendrick, Dad, and Mom started living in the new house, which we remodeled for accessibility. "Harmony, what happened? You suddenly went quiet," a neighbor asked, snapping me back to reality during a tea party. "Sorry, it's nothing. I'm just really grateful to those kids," I responded. "Thanks to them, I'm now enjoying a peaceful retirement with my husband." As we enjoyed the cake, I reflected on how these nearly 40 years were the stepping stones to my current happiness.